This is the Evolution R210 SMS. This machine can cut wood, metal or plastic with the supplied blade, or you can swap that over for a diamond disc, which enables you to cut masonry, tiles, etc. This is one of the most versatile mitre saws that you can actually get because you can cut so much material on it. This has a slide function, so you can actually cut material which is 230mm wide by 65mm deep. You can also cut mitres on this machine at 50 degrees in either direction, and you can also bevel the machine over from 0 to 45 degrees. So I'm now just going to go through a few of the features of the machine and just explain exactly what everything does. If you undo the knob at the front there and press in the lever, you can then turn the machine and that will go to 50 degrees in either direction. The machine does come with positive locks, so it will actually lock in at all of the important angles which you may need. So you can see as I'm moving that, it's locking in at 0 degrees, then locks in at 15, 22.5, 30 and 45 degrees, and it does that in both directions. The saw comes with this useful work clamp which can be used on the left hand side or the right hand side of the machine. On the top there we have the switch for the laser. I have to say that I don't really use lasers because I do think they are a bit of a gimmick, but some people may find that useful. The machine comes with a depth stop, which is very useful. That limits the depth at which the blade can cut, so you can adjust that, and that is very useful for some woodworking joints. Once you've adjusted it, you can lock that in position. There is then a stop there. When you pull the machine down, it will then stop on the depth stop, limiting the depth at which the blade can travel. And you can leave that set in a certain position, and then you can simply flip that part out of the way, giving you the full depth of cut. We've then got the locking pin which locks the machine in the down position for when you're transporting it. That is very easy to use. And on this side of the machine, this is something new on the Evolution machines. We've actually got somewhere to wrap the power cord around, which will prevent it from getting damaged. You've then got the release knob to enable the machine to do the sliding function. That can be locked in any position. We've then got the bevel release lever at the back there. You can simply undo that. That enables you to bevel the machine over. I've now set this up on the Evolution mitre stand, and you will notice that I've connected it up to the vacuum. That will remove a lot of the dust. I'm now going to do some test cuts on some timber, some aluminium and some steel. One thing I must point out about this is it's not actually intended for use on galvanised steel such as Unistrut. For some reason they do not recommend you use this machine for cutting galvanised steel. The first cut that I'm going to do is going to be in real time. Every other cut after that is going to be speeded up by approximately 300 to 400% to ensure that the video is as short as possible. I've just cut two 45-degree cuts on this piece of architrave, which has given us a 90-degree angle, and you can see that that is absolutely bob on. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that whatsoever. And as you can see, it's cut that absolutely no problem at all, and it is cold to the touch. I've just done a bevel cut on some skirting board which is approximately 9 inches deep. You may need to get a 45-degree square in order to ensure that you set the machine up correctly to do cuts like this, but you can quite clearly see from that it has cut that absolutely bob on. If if I put the square on there, that is absolutely perfect at 90 degrees. Obviously this wood is bored slightly, so cutting bored wood is obviously a lot more difficult, but you can see that that has given us a perfect bevel cut down that piece of skirting board. I'm now going to change the blade for the diamond blade. Before we do that, we need to switch off and unplug the saw. This is a 12-inch granite tile. As you can see, this is too wide to fit on the machine, but you can cut from one side, flip it over and then cut from the other side. So that's the Evolution R210 SMS. It really is a fantastic saw. It's very versatile, it's accurate, and it'll cut virtually anything. If I had to pick a fault with the saw, it would be the lead. The lead on this machine could do with being a couple of meters longer. So that's the review part of the video over with. If you continue watching, I'll show you how to set this machine up from new, and I'll show you how to ensure that the blade is cutting squarely. When you take the saw out of the box, you do have to do a little bit of assembly, but it is very easy to do. So if we take that part of the saw, spin that round, on the back there is a Allen key, and that does two different sizes. That end fits the blade, and that end enables you to adjust the fence at the back. Unfortunately, it doesn't actually fit the adjustment screw there. And in order to move that, you're going to need a 5mm Allen key, which will fit in there like so. And you may also need a 10mm spanner or an adjustable to loosen off the locking nut. So to start off with, we need to press in that lever and turn the machine so that it is at 90 degrees or on the 0 mark. Then I'm going to take the slide rails, and on the end there you'll see these plastic parts. We need to ensure that they are pulled out. Like so. And then once the cutting head is placed on there, it actually pushes out those two pins, which then locks that in position. We then need to ensure this is the correct way up so that Evolution can be read. We simply take that and push that through the linear bearings at the back there. We can then just lock that in position, and then on the cutting head itself you'll see those two holes. We simply need to get that and push that onto the linear slides. When we push that on there, you should hear it click into position, like so. And if you check in that hole, you should be able to see the green locating pin. You need to ensure that you can see the full part of the pin. That then means that that is fully engaged and locked in position. We can now take the Allen key that's supplied, and we can undo these two small hex screws. So we just need to remove both of these at each side. We can then take the table extension. These are left and right handed, so they will actually only fit one way around. We can then place the hex bolts back in there and we can tighten those up. We now need to insert this cable guide. To do that, you need to ensure that the machine is in the forward position with it locked and also with the head tilted up. Once you've done that, just get the cable, hook it around the first cable guide there, and then at the back take the second cable guide, and there are actually locating lugs on that. So simply push that into position, and then that is held in position using the self-tapping screw. That is actually a useful feature because you can actually wrap the cable around there. That is something new on this saw. I've never actually seen that before on one of the Evolution saws. We then need to take that knob. That simply screws into the front of the machine there. And then finally we have the work clamp. That will just go in one of the holes either on the left hand side or the right hand side of the machine to hold the workpiece that you are cutting. So that is it. It is very, very easy to set this machine up. We're now going to install the blade on this machine. To do that, you need to press in that lever which releases the blade guide, and to lock the spindle you need to press in that button there. That will prevent the spindle from rotating. So you do need to ensure that the machine is unplugged when you do this, obviously. I'm going to press in the spindle lock button and I'm just going to undo the bolt that's in there. This is actually a left-handed thread, so you do need to undo it going in the opposite direction than what you would normally. So I'm just going to remove that bolt, and I'm going to remove the flange from there. The blade will have a directional arrow on. You need to ensure that the blade is fitted in the correct direction. And if you look on the machine itself, it does actually have an arrow there telling you which direction the blade rotates in. So we need to match those two up like so. We can then press in the lever there and we can pull the machine down slightly, and then we can simply take the guide and move that round out of the way. You can hold that with your thumb. You can then insert the blade until it's on the rear flange there. You can then take the front part of the flange, put that on there, and then you can insert the bolt, remembering that it's a left-handed thread. So I'm now going to let go of the blade guide. I'm now going to press in the spindle lock again, and then I'm going to tighten up this bolt. So that's how easy it is to fit the blade. It really is a simple operation, can be done in a matter of minutes. Before you use the machine, it's a good idea to do a couple of simple checks to ensure that it is going to be accurate to begin with. A machine like this can actually be adjusted in a few different ways, and it could have been knocked or banged during transportation, so it's always a good idea to check that the blade is square to the fence at the back and to the table before you attempt to do any cuts. So I'm just going to press in the guide release. I'm going to pull the machine down, and then when it's in that position I'm going to push in the locking pin on the top there, and that will hold the machine down. I'm then going to undo the slide locking knob at the back there. I'm just going to push that right back, and then I'm going to tighten up the screw again. Once we've got it in that position, we can then check if the blade is square to the fence at the back. So I'm ensuring that the square is on the fence at the back there, and I'm just pushing that straight up to the blade, ensuring that there is no gap at all. And that looks pretty good, to be honest. You won't get it much better than that. If you've got a gap anywhere along there, you will have to adjust the back fence until you get it square with the blade. If you do need to adjust the fence, you can do it quite easily by loosening that screw and the two screws at this side using the supplied Allen key. You can then adjust it using the square and tighten those back up. We now need to check that the blade is square to the table. To do that, you can take the square, put it on the table, and hold it against the blade. When you do this, you need to ensure that the square is not actually touching the carbide teeth, because they stick out slightly from the blade itself. And we do actually have a tiny gap at the top there, and that will mean that your saw will not be as accurate as it could be. I'll just shine the torch on this and you should actually be able to see it. There's no gap at the bottom, but at the top there is a slight gap. So we're going to adjust that until we get rid of the gap so that it cuts perfectly straight. In order to adjust this, it is very easy. We simply need to pull out the locking pin on the top there and lift up the head, undo the handle at the back, and simply tilt that over so it's in the 45-degree position. We then have this bolt which simply needs adjusting a bit, and because we had a gap at the top of the blade, we actually need to raise that up a little bit. So to do that, I'm just going to get the 10mm spanner. I'm just going to undo it. I'm then going to turn that to the left slightly, and then I'm going to retighten the locking nut. We can then tilt the machine back up to the 90-degree position, or the 0 mark. We can lock the handle off at the back there, and then we'll just check that. We've still got a tiny gap, so again I'm going to pull the pin out, lift the head up, undo the handle, tilt that out of the way, and then I'm just going to undo the locking nut, and then I'm just going to turn that about 1/8 of a turn, and then I'm going to retighten the locking nut. It is actually only a fraction of a millimetre out, but when you get your machine at first, it is best to set it up accurately, that way you are guaranteed accurate cuts. This time we've got it absolutely perfect. You can push that straight up there, it's straight against the blade. I'll shine the torch at the back and you can see that there is no gap at all. So we now know that that will give us an extremely accurate cut. So that's how to assemble the saw, and that is how to insert the blade and ensure it is square before you start. I hope you found this video useful. If you have and you haven't done so already, please subscribe to the channel.